What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode here of the BlockHash Podcast, your number one resource for all that is happening across the emerging tech space. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe wherever you listen to or watch the show. Today, I'm joined by another wonderful guest, Joan. He is the co-founder and CEO of Openfort. Joan, welcome to the show, man. Pleasure to have you on today. How you doing?
Hey, doing good. Thanks for having me around.
Likewise. To get things underway, would love to learn a little bit about yourself to kick off the episode. Maybe tell us a bit about your backgrounds, what kind of led you into the Web3 side of the infrastructure space, and maybe also what kind of piqued your interest initially as well, and eventually led to Openfort.
So yeah, I started engineering here based in Barcelona myself, and since after graduation, I knew I wanted to do jump into startups and start building products that actually makes people happy and simplifies their life. And at the time when we started, we were doing like a lot of projects and like side projects in the hacking around digital workspaces. It was during COVID times, and so my co-founder and myself, we started building things around, hey, how do you connect with like your colleague when is everyone is under Zoom meeting? How do you actually engage in conversations, etc., etc. And so we built a couple of these projects. Some of them failed, some of them were successful and got acquired. And with a bit of funding and a bit of savings that we managed to save, we entered the Web3 space as like, okay, the primitives are interesting, the idea or like the utopia that they're selling makes a lot of sense. It's something that I would love my life to be to revolve around. And so we attended as many hackathons as possible. So we were jumping to ETH Amsterdam, we went to New York, we did a couple of them online as well. And you start learning, you win some prizes, you meet some cool people, and that's kind of like how we actually entered into like the whole crypto space. And then with enough knowledge, right, you start seeing like market gaps. You start seeing things, either projects that could be interesting, projects that you would love to work on. And so when we started, more serious projects with my co-founder, we initially wanted to do a decentralized Firebase. So yeah, Firebase is like a kind of like backend as a service platform. And like the whole premise of it was like, okay, why would you host something and have a vendor lock-in platform where later on you're entirely dependent on them, right? Like, what if they go down? What if they change their business model, etc. At the time, we didn't pursue that idea, and we end up pivoting what is today Openfort. But nevertheless, it was like a really great experience. We learned a lot there, and now it's just like full powered in Openfort.
And what would you say is maybe a good summary of the mission for Openfort when it comes to Web3 wallet infrastructure? Like, what more specifically do you guys want to work on when it comes to that regard?
I think literally the idea of Openfort, it's kind of like revolving around the idea, okay, if we have to reinvent how money works on the internet, we also need to reinvent how people should interact with their money, right? And in crypto, the only way to do that is via a private public key pair, right, which is a wallet. And so when you look at wallets, like they're kind of like a very cornerstone technology for like this space. And so you come into the views like, okay, you either build an end user wallet, so something like a website, a mobile app, and you curate every single pixel of the button, you understand the user journeys, etc. Or you build infrastructure that allows people to build that type of experience, right? And Jaume and I were great engineers, but we never had much experience when it comes to end user product, even though we knew that it was exciting. And so the core vision and mission here is like, okay, how we enable as many people as possible to either have a wallet where they put their savings and where they put the way that they buy things online, and how to enable builders like developers to actually build experiences that come with a wallet built in, right? And so we think that this is a massive opportunity, and like done correctly, it should feel more native that any other fintech solution that we have today.
Yeah, it's wallets. I think a lot of things in this space, not just wallets too, can be very difficult and very confusing at times for the average user. And I think that's something that's also kind of held the space back as it's kind of innovated beyond. I like to say innovating beyond comprehension for a lot of people. It's just moving too fast and everything's a bit too difficult for people to fully understand. So a lot of abstraction is, I think, something that's important for this space to do going forward. I think that's something that I really like about Openfort when I was looking into you guys. I noticed your slogan was "Make wallets our problem, not yours," which I kind of like. That's the way I think it should be. But could you walk us through maybe a bit of your view of some of the biggest pain points in Web3 when it comes to wallet infrastructure, like some of the bigger issues and problems and things that need to be fixed and abstracted away that you guys are focusing on?
Yeah, it's a massive it's a massive product to work on, and there's like a lot of different verticals, type of like value propositions that you can have, etc. Um, for us, when we started building Openfort, one of the key pain points that we tackled initially was the whole experience when interacting with the blockchain itself, right? So we came from the assumption that the initial crypto native people already had like the famous MetaMasks, like the Rabbit wallets, etc. But still, every time that they wanted to interact with the button and that prompted the Chrome extension to do something, we thought, okay, why do we actually need this Chrome extension to prompt anything? Why do I actually need to have any existing tokens already in the wallet to interact, to pay for gas and stuff like that, right? And so the first iteration, like the first product that we built there, was literally a technology that allows us for first pay the gas on behalf of the user, right? So you don't need to have any token there. And secondly, like allowed us to create temporary keys so that as developer, if I want to, let's say a game, right? If I want to have like a very smooth experience in the game, I could sign with these temporary keys instead of use my private key to sign these transactions, right? And this will allow us to have a more of a pop-up less experience, if you like, where you don't have to interact with these Chrome extensions at all. And that was like a perfect suitcase for, gaming in general. Then kind of like the second wave of developers came to market was like, okay, I actually want to build like the next fintech in crypto rails. I actually want to build like a saving app on crypto rails and stuff like that. And so those were literally targeting people that would never heard of wallets before, right? And so on that, the abstraction came from the seed phrasing itself and how you make it progressively more abstracted for people that they can jump in with an email or like a Google account to later on say, okay, I have enough money here. I actually want to take my private key, move it somewhere else, or I actually want to add more security considerations like two-factor authentication and stuff like that to it, right? And so it's always, there's a lot of pain points, but it's always how to progressively move these pain points down to the place where you want to add this friction, right? Like initially, if you have zero money, it's okay to abstract everything because there's literally zero to lose. But then the more money you have, or like the more experience you have in a wallet, you actually want to care about the type of security that you have, like the fail safes and stuff like that. And so now basically Openfort, it's focusing more and more towards, okay, we have an infrastructure that makes sense and we have something that is scalable, but there's always some parts that you can improve. And in our case, we are, okay, how do we make the whole infrastructure more like less vendor locking, right? Like more resilient to Openfort going down, more resilient to us ceasing to exist or, not having more money, etc. And that's kind of like where, where the main pain points and like the main value proposition is going towards now.
Yeah, did you? I probably did, but did you happen to see when AWS went down and Microsoft went down, or at least their backend server? Well, like a week or two ago.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's
like that's
very
the type
related
of
in a
things.
similar way.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny and awkward to see a lot of the Web3 space using some of those centralized sources, and And yeah, again, it comes back to like what you're doing with Openfort. I think there needs to be more ways to, you know, abstract that away, not be so reliant on centralized sources like that, being able to continue on if there's downtime or not have downtime. We don't. That's why we're in this space, right? We don't want to be dealing with those kinds of issues.
Yeah. This is precisely why we are focusing in such areas, not because we think that it's a product that needs to exist, because it needs, but also because if you could start a whole product with this type of mentality in place, and like with this design choice, you would come like in in 2 3 4 years time, you would have such a different product. That is, if like your objective would be, no, I want to make a lot of money for my clients, right? Like the objectives are completely different. You might start from like the base primitive of, I have a public like a private public keeper, but like it's such an important, it's such an important role within like the spec of products and value propositions that exist out there, that is something that we realize, okay, something like this needs to exist, and we can actually tackle it.
Do you have any use cases that you can kind of highlight as an example that kind of show with maybe some clients Openfort in action a bit, and maybe some of the solutions that you provided in one of these examples? And if so, what was the end results, some of the benefits to the clients? I'm sure people would be very curious what some of those maybe look like.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the one of the most interesting use cases when we initially started was people trying to build like their own Web3 Steam. So kind of like a gaming aggregator where you have a wallet, and then this wallet can be used across different games, right? With like the same balance. And that was like something really, really interesting, because it had like lots of challenges around, okay, how do we actually manage secrets with non-JavaScript environments? How do we actually abstract this in like a specific gaming engines and stuff like that? And so you have a use case, like you have games like Games for a Living here. They're also based in Barcelona, or a network called Beam, that they were focusing a lot on gaming, where we successfully implemented these solutions. um, and then like you have other like more enterprisey clients where they are actually doing a lot of due diligence on kind of like, okay, this is like infrastructure that you have. What's the path for me to go from something that Openfort has on premise and on the cloud to something where I could eventually self-host it if I wanted to, right? And like, what would be the things that I need to consider? How would I do that? And usually those that end up being like more fintech like clients, where they want to manage the private keys in a specific way because of compliance, or because they where their product managers are designing their systems, right? And it's interesting how, depending on like the vertical that you're doing, like they care more or less about specific parts of the product.
What do you also think about maybe the future of wallet UX, and maybe where we can take that? Like, do you think we can get to a point where we can just abstract away almost all of the functionality that we have today with it, so that it's just click and play and operate without having to like do all these different connections and bridges and swapping and holding the right tokens and interacting with the right platforms and signing every single transaction? It's just too complicated, I think, for the average person. That's just one aspect, but like, beyond that, like you were talking about, where do you see this going in the future in terms of how we simplify the whole Web3 ecosystem from a wallet perspective?
Yeah. I mean, I honestly think the future is now. You like all these, different struggles that you were describing. I think like these are already solved. Honestly, it's just a matter of developers prioritizing this type of UX in the product. But everything that you've already mentioned, it's 85-90% there. So what I'm most excited future wise is how, like, now that we have Revolut like experiences on our mobile phones, right? Now that we can actually use our credit cards attached to a wallet to pay for our groceries and stuff like that, how do we actually go towards things that the current payment system can do? So for instance, how do I use wallets to pay endpoints directly, like API endpoints directly, where before I was, paying a monthly fixed rate of $100 to just barely use, 3 APIs, and now I can pay just a tenth of a cent for actually doing a call, right? How do I make agents interact between them, like AI, right? Like the whole AI conversation going, hey, if you are talking, to code, this code will feel more native, talking to another or like interacting one another if they can talk, like if they can actually sign things with the code itself and like to actually use internet money and this type of stuff, right? So those I think like are the next progression of wallets. And it's kind of like the barrier, like it's where the competitive advantage of a wallet comes to as well, because human level UX, it's already achieved in most cases. Yeah, you can argue, there would be like different devices, different improvements, the way that we interact with mobile phones and stuff like that. But eventually, like more and more of this automated, like agentic finance is coming to us. One way and another, we will start trusting more and more agents. We will start trusting more like their choices. And so all these automation, like automations, all these approvals, authorizations will happen through a wallet. And that's where I think a lot of people are focusing today.
Yeah, what do you think about agentic finance and e-commerce? We've done a bunch of episodes kind of talking about this a little bit. We just did an episode with Coinbase recently. We talked about this as well. Pretty adamant that agentic e-commerce is going to be the future of how we do a lot of stuff online, and how we do a lot of payments and finance. I think it's very fascinating, and I imagine a big part of that is wallet infrastructure in particular, because you need these agents to be able to access and sign transactions in your wallet that you give them permission to do. Maybe you're talking to your assistant on your phone and you say, hey, I need you to go buy this at Amazon. It's really important. I forgot to get it and I need it by this evening. What kind of discretion does it have to go into your wallet and do certain things? If you don't have money, can it convert it to Bitcoin for you to make a payment, or, this and that? I imagine there's a lot of tweaking maybe behind the scenes to make that work properly. I'm curious, like, if you put some thought into that, maybe that's something you guys are also kind of eyeballing in the future. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, like this is something I'm very, very excited as well. I think, yeah, it's a matter of time. Obviously, the more we start trusting, as I said, like the criteria of these agents and like the reputation and like how good they are at doing something, right? The faster we will be interacting with them. Like for sure, you will never interact with an agent that says has 40-50% accuracy in whatever they do. But like if you find an agent that has like 95% accuracy in what they do and it saves you like an hour a day doing something, I don't see why we wouldn't try it, right? Like the odds are on your favor. And I think like a lot of like these interactions will also happen to be very agentic driven, like maybe checkouts for the sake of the experience of buying something, and checking the size, checking the texture of a cloth will be something that might take longer to catalyze to a certain extent. But I think we will see a lot of like other types of transactions, like paywalls, pay-per-use, even like the micro tipping examples, etc. That we'd probably like get way more traction from a developer standpoint than just like having to build like an integration on Shopify to buy a sweater for your mom. Like this will eventually happen for sure, but this still needs the consumer to trust a lot the agent, and like still needs a couple of like missing parts of infrastructure. Whereas if you're paying like an API for premium data, it should be fairly straightforward and fast for a developer to do that.
What do you think about the ability to protect data within a wallet? In a lot of ways, it's much like, in essence, a bank account, in terms of your history, what you purchase, what you buy. I mean, as wallets probably evolve more and more, it's going to be able to tell you more information, and it'll be no different than a bank account, except just not denominated in dollars. And there's already a lot of people that are upset with big tech for taking data and using it for whatever they want to use it for. And with the trend being going towards data protection and better data ownership, I imagine agentic provides a little bit of a keyhole for them to see what you're doing on the crypto side too within your wallet. If that's not, if these agents aren't fully vetted the way they're supposed to be, or maybe they're coming out so quickly that they're changing their back end a little bit too fast to keep up with. I don't know, that it's a little bit out there still because there's so much that hasn't actually happened yet. It's a little theoretical, but is there a way to, like, I guess, put controls on the data as well that maybe is being extracted outside of a wallet from an agentic perspective?
Yeah, it's I mean, I love this question because it tackles to something that like some of the problems we are recently started to explore open for, which is everything around privacy and how to actually be compliant with whatever regulation and whatever you need to disclose, but also be private in the sense of have like be like, let's put it, it's usually the idea of I'm innocent by default and I have the right to be private, and then if I have to show something I will show something, whereas now blockchains are probably the opposite way in terms of like showing everything by default, right? And so the more we start doing um, like interactions with agents that allows us to buy stuff, that defines who we are, that gets our taste, like how we interact with those, etc. I think like the more important like this type of primitives would be. I think there are some efforts in that regard as well, like to build standards or to build certain parts of like confidentiality, confidentiality layers, like not disclose the amount that we are, that we're buying something for, or hide the address where we're sending it for, or like to that we are like the receiver address and stuff like that. I think these parts will become more and more crucial as like more and more people go into the blockchain, and until we, it's probably like like a roadblock in an extent, where until we don't figure out a way to actually, either encrypt, make it private somehow, until we don't figure out this form factor, there will be people and like even enterprises that they will never be comfortable using it, just because there's parts of like the legal framework that they cannot do. Like you cannot tell to the public how much your employee is earning, right? Or you cannot tell to the world what was like the condition of like a specific mortgage, etc., etc. And so all these pieces, they need to come to the blockchain as well, and they also will find like their form factor on agents.
Yeah, I imagine there's a lot of moving parts that need to be taken into account from a privacy perspective, but also from an employer employee perspective, government perspective. Like there's different levels of needing to know certain types of information, but also not divulging everything. I think agentic will be a very good solution for that in the future, and coupled with crypto, I think there's a lot of good solutions there. But it's an exciting time to see finance and tech kind of collide together in this day and age. What's on the roadmap for you guys heading into 2026? Anything you guys are focused on in particular with Openfort outside of what we discussed today? Will you guys be traveling around to any events or conferences, any launches or announcements coming up? What can you hint at?
I mean, I know what we are working at now until the end of the month, and until the end of the year. And probably like what's the half, like the first half of 2026. Now we are, like a big part of what we do is that open source, like Openfort is an open source self-hostable technology, right? And so we've spent more than half a year just fine tuning like this part of the stack, so that we can launch a product called Open Signer, which is an open source self-hostable key management solution. We think it's one of the first ones out there with like a fully feature complete way to actually offer non-custodial wallets. And so hopefully a community also starts contributing and like adding more and more features there. So that's gonna be like, that's something that we're working now until the end of the month to get out there. Then later on, we want to, like, my co-founder and I are always big believers of Bitcoin, so we want to add some, Bitcoin support and a couple of like extra chains that also requested Openfort support, and like the features there. And I think by sooner rather than later, like next year, like the whole team will shift towards building more infrastructure for agents, and specifically on X402, which is a specific standard for agentic payments on blockchains. And so we mainly start focusing a lot on infrastructure that can be built there, seeing what is already out there. Like I think like a lot of work has been already been done for the community when it comes to facilitators, abstractions as well, on like the way like different APIs and the agents can discover. And so a lot of things, like I think the Ikigai here would be, okay, how do we make agentic finance infrastructure with the privacy part of it? And that's where the company and like the team are going to focus on at least the first half of 2026.
Excellent. And then where can people go to learn more about Openfort and keep up with everything that you guys are doing?
Sure. So we are both active on Twitter and LinkedIn. I feel like my European counterparts are mostly on Europe and on LinkedIn. So we post as much as possible there. And like for anyone else, Americans and Asian is usually Twitter. So you can go to neither of those handles and you'll find us there.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Joan, I appreciate the time today. It's been great learning about Openfort, what you guys are focusing on when it comes to wallet infrastructure in the Web3 space. And covered some interesting topics today, especially around what you guys are doing and abstracting away the difficulties and the complexity, and then also agentic. And I think there's so many different things that you could talk about in the space that are related to wallets, because that's kind of like a core piece of infrastructure in the industry. So I love what you guys are doing. Keep me up to date on everything you guys continue to do as you head into the new year, and would love to do this again with you in the near future.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's been a great combo.